"Sleep with me tonight, and I'll save your dying daughter." Later, he regretted it and fell in love with her. "Hello, my most beautiful, deeply cherished, and forever faithful family. How are you, my heart's light? You are not just my support. You are my soul's comfort, my strength in every silence. Every word I share is rooted in the love we've built together. Through every joy and every tear, you've been there. We are not just growing, we are blooming together. Here is a prayer wrapped in pure love for you. Dear Heavenly Father, shower my beloved family with peace that quiets every storm and love that never fades. Let every step they take be blessed and every tear be turned into joy. Fill their homes with laughter, their hearts with healing, and their spirits with hope. Guide them gently and hold them always in your tender grace. Amen. If this message touched your heart, show your love, like, comment and share. Because love built this home and it will carry us forward. Comment with pride, "I am with my brother." Our next beautiful goal is 20,000 followers, and with love, we will reach it together. The rain fell in unforgiving sheets across the Manhattan skyline, washing the city in a glistening veil of desperation. Karen Gwenzel stood motionless beneath the imposing shadow of Cantor Pharmaceuticals, her elegant frame trembling not from the cold, but from something far more devastating. Her usually radiant face was streaked with tears that mingled with raindrops, making it impossible to tell where her sorrow ended and the skies began. Pedestrians hurried past, umbrellas tilted against the downpour, none sparing a glance for the beautiful woman whose world was crumbling beneath her feet. Karen barely noticed them. Her attention was fixed on the sleek glass tower before her, 60 floors of wealth and power that held her daughter's life in balance. "Ma'am, you can't stand here all night," a security guard called from the entrance. Karen clutched her phone tighter, the screen still displaying the hospital's message. "Critical condition. Payment required for specialized treatment." The words had burned themselves into her consciousness over the past 72 hours. Her 6-year-old daughter, Lily, had been diagnosed with a rare heart condition that required immediate experimental treatment. Treatment that Karen's insurance wouldn't cover. Treatment that cost more than she could possibly gather in time. 3 days ago, Lily had collapsed during her dance recital. Karen could still hear the terrible thud of her daughter's tiny body hitting the wooden stage floor, could still feel the panic rising in her throat as she pushed through the crowd, shouting, "I'm a nurse, let me through." But all her medical training, all her years working in the pediatric ward, had provided no answers when the doctors delivered their verdict. Lily needed the XR7 treatment, a new therapy developed by Cantor Pharmaceuticals. Without it, her daughter had weeks, maybe days. Karen had exhausted every avenue, her savings, loans, a desperate GoFundMe campaign. She'd begged the hospital's financial department, reached out to charities, even tried to contact the pharmaceutical company directly. Each attempt had been met with sympathetic but unyielding rejection, every possible avenue except one. With a deep breath that did nothing to calm her racing heart, Karen stepped out of the rain into the gleaming lobby of Cantor Pharmaceuticals. "I need to see Mike Cantor," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. The receptionist barely glanced up. "Do you have an appointment?" "No. But then I'm afraid that's not possible. Mr. Cantor doesn't see anyone without an appointment." "Please," Karen whispered, her composed facade cracking slightly. "It's about my daughter. She's dying." The receptionist's expression softened momentarily. "I'm very sorry, but Mr. Cantor receives hundreds of compassionate use requests. There's a formal application process on our website. I've submitted 3 applications. They were all denied. Then I'm sorry, but there's nothing more I can do." Karen felt something break inside her, the final thread of hope snapping with an almost audible sound. "My daughter has days, not weeks," she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "I'm not leaving until I see him." Perhaps it was the quiet determination in her voice, or perhaps it was the wild desperation in her eyes, but the security guard who had been watching the exchange stepped forward. "Mr. Cantor is working late tonight," he said quietly. 15th floor." Before the receptionist could object, Karen was already moving toward the elevators, leaving a trail of rainwater in her wake. The elevator rose silently, each floor bringing her closer to the man who held her daughter's life in his hands, Mike Cantor, billionaire pharmaceutical magnate. Known for his brilliance, his ruthlessness, and his complete lack of sentiment when it came to business decisions. Karen had researched him extensively over the past 72 sleepless hours. 38 years old, never married, no children. A reputation for being cold, calculating, and utterly focused on his company's bottom line. She had nothing to offer him, nothing except herself. When the elevator doors opened, Karen stepped into a minimalist reception area. Through glass doors at the far end, she could see a man standing by floor-to-ceiling windows, his back to her, looking out at the rain-drenched city. Even from behind, he radiated power and control, broad shoulders under a perfectly tailored suit, dark hair with just a touch of silver at the temples. She pushed through the doors without knocking. He turned, surprise flashing briefly across his face before settling into cool assessment. Mike Cantor was more handsome than his photographs suggested. Strong jawline, penetrating blue eyes, and features that seemed carved by an artist obsessed with perfection. But there was something cold in that perfection, something that made Karen shiver despite herself. "How did you get up here?" he asked, his voice deep and even. "My name is Karen Gwensel. My daughter Lily is dying, and your company has the only treatment that can save her." For a moment, he studied her with detached curiosity, as if she were a specimen under a microscope rather than a desperate mother. "So you decided to break into my office? I've been trying to reach you through proper channels for days. And you were denied, I assume." "Yes. Then breaking in won't change anything." He turned back to the window. "Security will escort you out." "Please." Karen took a step forward, hating the pleading in her voice but unable to stop herself. "She's 6 years old. The doctors say she has maybe a week without the XR7 treatment. Our compassionate use program has strict criteria. If you were denied, there was a reason." "The reason is money," Karen said, anger rising through her desperation. "We don't have enough of it, and you won't release the treatment without it." Mike Cantor turned back to her, his expression unreadable. "Business is business, Ms. Gwensel. The treatment costs millions to develop." "And what is a child's life worth?" Something flickered in his eyes. Not compassion, but interest. For the first time, he seemed to truly look at her. His gaze moved from her face, down her rain-soaked form, lingering in a way that made her skin prickle. "You're very beautiful," he said unexpectedly. The non sequitur caught Karen off guard. "What does that have to do with anything?" "Perhaps nothing, perhaps everything." He moved closer, circling her slowly. "What would you do to save your daughter, Ms. Gwensel?" "Anything," she whispered, the word escaping before she could consider its implications. A cold smile touched his lips. "Anything is a dangerous promise." Karen felt her heart rate accelerate as his meaning became clear. "You can't be suggesting—" "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm making an offer." His voice was detached, clinical, as if discussing a business proposal rather than something so intimate. "Sleep with me tonight, and I'll save your dying daughter." The words hung in the air between them, obscene in their simplicity. Karen took an involuntary step backward, her hand rising to her throat. "You're disgusting." "I'm practical. You want something from me? I've named my price." He returned to his desk, the matter apparently settled in his mind. "The choice is yours. How can you even—" "Very easily." He looked up at her, his gaze unwavering. "You're an attractive woman. I'm a man with certain appetites. Your daughter needs something only I can provide. It's a simple transaction, Karen." Felt as if she were drowning, the air in the luxurious office suddenly too thin. That's prostitution. That's negotiation. He checked his watch. You have 30 seconds to decide before I call security. Karen's mind raced through her options. There were none. No one else could help Lily. No other treatment existed. 10 seconds. She thought of Lily's smile, of her tiny hand clutching Karen's in the hospital bed, of the brave way she tried not to cry during treatments. Time's up. Wait, Karen whispered, the word tearing itself from her throat. One night? Mike Cantor's expression didn't change. One night, and your daughter gets immediate access to the XR7 treatment, full course, all expenses paid. The rain continued to fall outside, matching the tears that now flowed freely down Karen's cheeks. I'll do it. He nodded once, as if he'd expected. Nothing less. I'll have my driver take you home to change. Be at the Meridian Hotel, penthouse suite at 9 o'clock. Come alone. Dress well. Karen felt numb as she nodded, unable to process what she had just agreed to. And Ms. Gwensel, he added as she turned to leave, I'll have the treatment authorization processed immediately. Your daughter will receive her first dose tomorrow morning. As Karen walked out of his office, shoulders straight despite the weight, crushing her heart, she thought she glimpsed something in Mike Cantor's eyes. Not compassion or guilt, nothing so human, interest, as if she were a new equation he couldn't quite solve. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing away everything except the bargain she had just made with the devil in a custom suit. Chapter 2. The Price of Life. Karen's apartment felt like a stranger's home as she moved through it in a daze. The modest two-bedroom in Queens that had always been her sanctuary now seemed to close in around her, witnessing her shame. She stood under the shower until the water ran cold, scrubbing her skin raw, as if preparing for a surgery rather than the night ahead. Lily's bedroom door was ajar, and Karen paused there, taking in the colorful drawings taped to the walls, the collection of stuffed animals arranged carefully on the purple bedspread, the tiny ballet slippers hanging from the doorknob. Everything in perfect order, waiting for a little girl who might never return if Karen didn't go through with tonight. Her phone chimed with a message from an unknown number. Treatment authorization processed. First dose scheduled for 8 a.m. tomorrow. Car waiting downstairs. The clinical detachment of the message made her stomach turn. To him, this was merely a transaction, her dignity in exchange for her daughter's life. Clean, simple, uncomplicated by emotion or ethics. Karen opened her closet, pushing past her practical nurse's scrubs to the few dresses she owned. Her fingers lingered on a midnight blue cocktail dress she'd worn to her cousin's wedding last year. It was the most expensive piece of clothing she owned, a rare splurge from before Lily's illness had drained her savings. As she slipped it on, Karen caught her reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at her was beautiful. Yes, smooth, dark skin, delicate features, full lips now pressed into a determined line, but her eyes held a hollowness that made her look like a stranger. For Lily, she whispered to her reflection, the mantra that had carried her through the hardest days of single motherhood. Everything for Lily. The black town car idled beneath her apartment building, the driver expressionless as he held the door for her. Karen slid into the leather-back seat, clutching her small purse like a shield. Manhattan's lights blurred past the window, the city oblivious to her private anguish. The Meridian Hotel loomed like a monolith against the night sky, its uppermost floors disappearing into low-hanging clouds. The doorman nodded respectfully as the driver murmured something to him, and Karen was ushered directly to a private elevator that required a keycard to operate. Mr. Cantor has arranged everything, the attendant said, swiping the card and stepping back. Penthouse. The elevator rose silently, each floor ticking by on the digital display like a countdown to her surrender. Karen closed her eyes, focusing on her breathing. In the hospital, she told anxious patients to breathe deeply when facing something frightening. Now she took her own advice, trying to calm the frantic beating of her heart. When the doors slid open, she stepped into a foyer of marble and glass. The penthouse suite sprawled before her, a temple to wealth with its soaring ceilings, minimalist furniture, and wall-to-wall windows showcasing the glittering city below. Mike Cantor stood by a granite bar, pouring amber liquid into 2 crystal glasses. He had changed from his business suit into black slacks and a charcoal cashmere sweater that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders and the leanness of his frame. In this more casual attire, he appeared almost approachable, if not for the cold calculation in his eyes as they assessed her. "You look lovely," he said, offering her a glass. "Drink?" Karen shook her head. "I'd prefer to keep a clear head." A small smile touched his lips, admirable but perhaps unwise under the circumstances. "Can we just—" Karen swallowed hard, unable to finish the sentence. Mike set down his untouched drink and stepped closer. "Are you always this direct, Ms. Gwentzel?" "Karen," she corrected automatically. If she was going to do this, at least he could use her first name. Karen. The way he said it, precise and measured, made it sound like he was tasting the syllables. "Very well. But I find anticipation enhances the experience. This isn't an experience for me," Karen said, her voice tight. "It's an endurance." Something flickered across his face, not quite offense, but perhaps surprise at her candor. Brutal. Honesty. Refreshing in its way. He moved to a panel on the wall and dimmed the lights, then pressed another button that caused soft jazz to flow from hidden speakers. The music felt obscene in its normalcy, as if this were a date rather than coercion. "Tell me about your daughter," he said unexpectedly, returning to his drink. The question caught Karen off guard. "What? Your daughter? The reason you're here? Tell me about her." Karen's throat tightened. She hadn't expected him to ask, hadn't prepared to speak of Lily in this context. "Why do you want to know?" "Curiosity," he shrugged. "Is it so strange to want to know about the life I'm apparently saving?" "Her name is Lily," Karen began hesitantly. "She's 6. She loves ballet and dinosaurs, which is an unusual combination, I suppose. She wants to be a dancing paleontologist when she grows up." Mike nodded, his expression unreadable. "And her father?" "Not in the picture. He left when I told him I was pregnant." "His loss," Mike said. And for a moment Karen thought she detected genuine sentiment in his voice, but then his eyes hardened again, returning to the calculating gaze of a businessman. "Shall we move to the bedroom?" Karen felt her heart drop to her stomach, but she nodded, following him through the expansive suite to a room dominated by an enormous bed with charcoal silk sheets. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, the lights below twinkling like fallen stars. "Would you prefer the lights on or off?" Mike asked, his tone as casual as if he were inquiring about a dinner preference. "Off," Karen whispered, her voice barely audible. He dimmed the lights until only the city glow from outside illuminated the room, casting long shadows across the plush carpet. Then he turned to her, his expression businesslike. "I'll need you to sign this first." He retrieved a document from the nightstand. A non-disclosure agreement, standard procedure. The surreality of signing legal paperwork before what was about to happen struck Karen with sudden hysterical clarity. Here she was, about to sell her body to save her daughter, and he was concerned about liability. "You want me to sign a contract saying I won't tell anyone you blackmailed me for sex in exchange for medical treatment?" she asked. Bitter laughter. "Threatening to escape." "I prefer to think of it as a mutually beneficial arrangement," Mike corrected smoothly. You're getting something you desperately need. I'm getting something I desire. Blackmail implies coercion without benefit. Karen snatched the pen from his hand, signing without reading. What did it matter? What dignity did she have left to protect? As she set the pen down, Mike stepped closer, his fingers coming up to trace the line of her jaw. You truly are exquisite, he murmured, more to himself than to her. Karen closed her eyes, blocking out his face, his touch, the entire situation. In her mind, she conjured Lily's smile, her tiny hand waving from the hospital bed that morning. "Mama, when can I come home?" she had asked, dark eyes wide with innocent trust that her mother would make everything right again, and Karen would, whatever the cost. Mike's lips found hers, and Karen forced herself to respond, to play the role required of her. His kiss was skilled but mechanical, lacking warmth or genuine passion. This was a business transaction for him, nothing more. His hands moved down her back, finding the zipper of her dress with practiced ease. Karen retreated into her mind as the blue dress pooled at her feet, focusing on the technicalities rather than the emotions. Her nurse's training had taught her to compartmentalize, to separate herself from difficult situations. She applied that skill now, distancing her consciousness from her body as Mike led her to the bed. Their coupling was exactly as Karen had expected, technically proficient but utterly devoid of intimacy. Mike was neither cruel nor kind, treating her body with the detached appreciation of a man admiring a fine sculpture. He didn't ask for her pleasure, and she didn't offer it, both understanding the transactional nature of their arrangement. When it was over, he rolled away without a word, his breathing already returning to normal. Karen lay still, staring at the ceiling, feeling strangely hollow, neither violated nor vindicated, simply empty. "The bathroom is through there if you want to shower," Mike said after a moment. His voice returned to its businesslike tone. Karen nodded silently, gathering the sheet around her as she slipped from the bed. In the luxurious marble bathroom, she caught sight of herself in the mirror, her carefully applied makeup smudged, her hair disheveled, her eyes haunted. But beneath the surface disarray, something steely remained in her gaze. She had survived, she had secured Lily's treatment. Nothing else mattered. When she emerged from the bathroom, dressed once more in her blue dress, Mike was already back in his slacks and sweater, typing on his phone. "I've confirmed the treatment schedule with the hospital," he said without looking up. "Dr. Reynolds will oversee it personally. He's the best in the field." "Thank you," Karen said, the words bitter on her tongue. "My driver will take you home." He finally looked up, his eyes clinical as they assessed her. "Our arrangement is complete." Karen nodded, gathering her purse and wrap. At the bedroom door, she paused, unable to leave without saying what burned in her throat. "You know, you could have just helped her because it was the right thing to do." Mike's expression didn't change. "The right thing is subjective, Karen. I've found that clear transactions are more satisfying than moral ambiguities. For you, perhaps. For everyone, eventually." He returned to his phone. "Good night." The dismissal was clear. Karen walked through the silent penthouse to the elevator, her heels clicking against the marble floor, the sound echoing in the emptiness. In the town car, as Manhattan's lights streaked past once more, Karen finally allowed herself to cry, not from shame or regret, but from a complex mixture of relief and revulsion. Tomorrow, Lily would receive the treatment she needed. Her daughter would live. Everything else was collateral damage she would deal with later. As dawn broke over the city, the rain that had drenched Karen the previous day had stopped, leaving the air clean and new. She sat beside Lily's hospital bed, watching the first light of day touch her daughter's sleeping face. Ms. Gwensel, a doctor in a white coat, appeared in the doorway, accompanied by two nurses wheeling a cart of equipment. I'm Dr. Reynolds. We're ready to begin the first XR7 treatment. Karen nodded, squeezing Lily's small hand as the little girl stirred awake. Everything's going to be okay now, sweetheart, she whispered, forcing a smile. Mama made sure of it, and as the treatment began, Karen refused to think about the price she had paid. Some costs were better left uncalculated. Chapter 3. Unexpected Developments. 2 weeks passed in a blur of hospital routines. Karen had returned to work part-time at the pediatric ward, arranging her shifts to spend as many hours as possible at Lily's bedside. The experimental XR7 treatment was administered every 3 days, each session leaving Lily exhausted, but showing incremental improvements that the doctors called promising. For the first week after their arrangement, Karen hadn't heard from Mike Cantor. She had expected as much. Their transaction was complete. Their paths had no reason to cross again. She had fulfilled her end of the bargain. He had fulfilled his, clean, simple, finished, which was why she had been completely unprepared when he first appeared in Lily's hospital room 5 days ago, carrying a small dinosaur encyclopedia. He had explained it as checking on his investment, but something in his demeanor suggested other motivations. Since then, his visits had become more frequent but unpredictable, leaving Karen constantly on edge. That Tuesday afternoon, she looked up from Lily's bed to find him standing in the doorway once again, this time with a more substantial gift tucked under his arm. Mike Cantor looked different in the harsh fluorescent lighting of the hospital room, less mythic, more human. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Karen's monthly rent, but his tie was loosened, and there was something almost uncertain in his stance. Karen felt her body tense, her arm instinctively tightening around Lily's shoulders. "What are you doing here?" Before Mike could answer, Lily looked up from her coloring book. "Who's that, Mama?" Mike's eyes shifted to the little girl, and something in his expression changed. Softened, perhaps, though Karen would have sworn this man was incapable of softness. "I'm Mike," he said, his voice gentler than Karen had ever heard it. "I work at the company that makes your medicine." Lily's face brightened. "The medicine that's making my heart better?" "That's right." He took a tentative step into the room, his eyes seeking Karen's permission. She gave a stiff nod, unwilling to create a scene in front of her daughter. "What are you drawing?" Mike asked, approaching the bed with careful movements, as if afraid of startling either of them. "It's a Tyrannosaurus Rex doing a pirouette," Lily explained seriously, holding up the drawing. "See his tutu?" The corner of Mike's mouth twitched. "I see it. Excellent attention to detail with the anatomically correct tail position." Lily beamed, her entire face lighting up with the unrestrained joy that only children can express. "Do you like dinosaurs too?" "I do." Mike pulled a chair up to the bedside, settling into it with surprising ease for a man who probably spent his days in executive boardrooms, though I was always partial to Triceratops myself. "They're okay," Lily conceded, "but T-Rex is the best. He's the king." Hard to argue with that logic. Karen watched the exchange with growing bewilderment. This gentle, attentive man bore little resemblance to the cold businessman who had propositioned her in his office, or the mechanical lover who had treated her body as a commodity. "I need to speak with Mr. Cantor for a moment," Karen said, squeezing Lily's shoulder. "Keep coloring, sweetheart. I'll be right outside." Lily nodded, already absorbed again in her dinosaur ballerina. In the hallway, Karen crossed her arms tightly across her chest, as if physically holding herself together. "Why are you here?" Mike's professional mask slipped back into place, though not completely. "I was checking on the trial results. Your daughter is one of our first pediatric patients to receive the full XR7 protocol. You could have read the reports. You didn't need to come in person. Perhaps I wanted to see the results for myself." Karen studied his face, searching for the ulterior motive that must be lurking beneath the surface. "Are you hoping for another Arrangement, because that's not happening. A flash of what might have been heard crossed his features before he controlled it. That's not why I'm here, Karen. Then why? He seemed to struggle with the answer, as if unsure himself. I don't know, he finally admitted, the candor surprising them both. Professional interest, perhaps. Karen didn't believe him, but she also couldn't discern what game he was playing. Well, you've seen her. She's responding well to the treatment. Is that all you needed to know? Mike's eyes held hers. Would it be a problem if I visited again? Why would you want to? She's a remarkable child. Karen felt a surge of maternal pride, despite herself. Yes, she is. And I find myself curious about her progress. Karen wanted to refuse, to tell him to stay away from them, to keep his clinical observations to the anonymous data in his reports. But Lily had already met him now, had already shown him her drawings and talked about dinosaurs. Refusing might lead to questions from her daughter that Karen wasn't prepared to answer. Fine, she said finally, but these visits are about Lily, not about me, not about us. There is no us. Understood. Mike nodded, his expression unreadable. Once more, I should get back to the office. Good afternoon, Karen. She watched him walk away, the confident stride of a man who owned the world, or at least believed he did. Only when he had disappeared around the corner did she allow herself to lean against the wall, suddenly exhausted. What game was Mike Cantor playing? And more importantly, why did she care? To Karen's surprise, Mike's visits became a regular occurrence. Twice a week he would appear in Lily's room, always bearing some small gift, a new dinosaur book, a miniature ballet tutu for her stuffed T-Rex, colored pencils for her increasingly elaborate drawings. Despite her initial misgivings, Karen couldn't deny that the visits brightened Lily's days in the sterile hospital environment. Her daughter, isolated from school friends and normal activities, clearly looked forward to Mr. Mike's visits, her face lighting up whenever he appeared in the doorway. More disconcerting was Karen's own growing fascination with these visits, with watching Mike Cantor, titan of industry and ruthless businessman, patiently explaining the difference between Jurassic and Cretaceous periods to a 6-year-old, or demonstrating proper plie form using an action figure as a model. It was like watching an actor play a role he hadn't been cast for, but somehow performed brilliantly anyway. Each visit revealed a new facet of the man she thought she'd understood completely on that rainy night in his office. "You're good with her," Karen observed one afternoon, 3 weeks into these unexpected visits. They stood in the hallway while a nurse helped Lily with her afternoon medications. "Have you been around children before?" A shadow passed over Mike's face. "Not recently." But at some point, he hesitated, as if deciding whether to share something personal. "I had a younger sister. She would have been about Lily's age when she died." The revelation hit Karen like a physical blow. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." "It's not in my company biography," he said with a wry twist of his lips. "Bad for the ruthless image." "How did she die?" Karen asked before she could stop herself. "Heart condition. Different from Lily's, but similar enough. The doctors couldn't do anything back then." His voice was controlled, emotionless, but Karen sensed the carefully contained pain beneath the words. "Is that why you went into pharmaceuticals? To develop treatments like XR7? Mike looked almost surprised by the question, as if he'd never made the connection, or never admitted it to himself. "Perhaps, in part, though I'd like to think I'm not quite so sentimental in my business decisions." "There's nothing wrong with sentiment," Karen said quietly. "It's what makes us human." Something flickered in his eyes, vulnerability quickly masked. Some might argue humanity is a liability in business. And what would Mike Cantor argue? Not the CEO, just the man. For a moment he seemed genuinely at a loss for words. Then, He glanced at his watch, the spell broken. "I have a board meeting. Please tell Lily I'll see her Friday." He was gone before Karen could respond, leaving her with the distinct impression that she had glimpsed something few people ever saw: the man behind the corporate mask. Friday afternoon found Karen dozing in the chair beside Lily's bed, exhausted from working a night shift followed by a morning at the hospital. She woke to the sound of her daughter's delighted giggle, a sound that had become precious in its rarity during the illness. Keeping her eyes closed, Karen listened to the quiet conversation happening beside her. "But why does the Brachiosaurus have such a long neck?" Lily was asking. "To reach the leaves at the tops of trees," Mike's voice replied patiently. "They were herbivores, plant-eaters, and the tallest trees had the best leaves. Like how I can't reach the cookies Mama puts on the top shelf?" Mike chuckled, the sound surprisingly warm. "Exactly like that, though I suspect your mother has different motivations than prehistoric trees. When I get better, can we go to the museum to see the dinosaur bones?" There was a slight pause. "I think that's something you should ask your mother. But would you come with us?" Another pause, longer this time. "If your mother agreed, I would. Like that very much." "She will," Lily said with a child's certainty. "She's not as grumpy when you're here." Karen nearly gave herself away then, fighting the urge to open her eyes and intervene in this dangerous line of conversation. "Is she grumpy a lot?" Mike asked, his tone careful. "Not grumpy," Lily corrected herself. "Sad. She thinks I don't know, but I see her crying sometimes when she thinks I'm asleep." Karen's heart constricted. She had tried so hard to shield Lily from her fears, to present an unwaveringly positive front. "Your mother is very brave," Mike said softly. "She loves you very much." "I know." The complete trust in Lily's voice made Karen's eyes sting behind her closed lids. "Do you like my mum, Mr. Mike?" This time the silence stretched so long that Karen almost opened her eyes to see Mike's expression. "Yes," he finally answered, his voice so quiet Karen barely caught it. "I admire her very much." "Good," Lily declared with satisfaction. "Because she needs a friend. She only ever talks to the other nurses and to me." "I'm not sure your mother considers me a friend, Lily." "Why not?" "You bring me presents, and you make her smile sometimes when she thinks no one's looking." Karen decided it was time to wake up before this conversation veered into territory she wasn't prepared to navigate. She stirred, blinking drowsily, to find both Lily and Mike watching her, her daughter with innocent affection, Mike with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. "Sorry," Karen murmured, straightening in her chair. "Night shift. We were being quiet so you could sleep," Lily announced proudly. "Mr. Mike was teaching me about why dinosaurs have different necks." "That's nice of him," Karen managed, her eyes meeting Mike's over her daughter's head. Something passed between them in that moment, not quite understanding, but perhaps the beginning of it. An acknowledgement that whatever had started in his rain-streaked office window was evolving into something neither of them had anticipated. Later, as Mike was leaving, he paused in the doorway. "Dr. Reynolds tells me Lily might be able to go home next week. Continue treatments as an outpatient." Karen's heart leaped. "He hasn't told me that yet. I may have seen the preliminary recommendation in my morning briefing." A small smile touched his lips. "Perks of being the boss." "Thank you for telling me." He nodded, hesitating as if he wanted to say something more. Instead, he simply said, "I'll see you both on Tuesday," and was gone. That night, as Lily slept peacefully for the first time in weeks, Karen stood by the window of the hospital room, looking out at the city lights. She found herself wondering which of those distant illuminated windows belonged to Mike Cantor's office, and what he was thinking right now. The realization that she cared about the answer was both startling and frightening. This wasn't part of their arrangement. This wasn't supposed to happen. And yet, as she watched a gentle rain begin to fall over the city, Karen couldn't deny the truth that was slowly taking root in her heart. Something was changing between them, something neither of them had bargained for. Chapter 4. The First Rejection. Lily's release from the hospital was a momentous occasion. After 6 weeks of confinement, the little girl practically skipped through the sliding doors, holding tightly to Karen's hand. April sunshine bathed them in gentle warmth, a welcome change from the sterile fluorescence they'd grown accustomed to. During those weeks, Mike's visits had become a regular part of their hospital routine. 3 times a week, he would appear, with small gifts for Lily and quiet conversation for Karen. While she maintained her emotional distance, Karen couldn't deny that Lily had grown attached to him, eagerly anticipating Mr. Mike's visits. "Remember, we'll need to come back 3 times a week for your treatments," Karen reminded her daughter as they approached the taxi stand. "I know, Mama," Lily said, her face tilted up to catch the sun's rays. "But I get to sleep in my own bed. Tonight, do you think Mr. Mike will visit us at home now?" The innocent question made Karen's heart skip uncomfortably. "I don't think so, sweetheart. Mr. Mike is very busy with his company, Ms. Gwensel." The familiar voice sent an unexpected shiver down Karen's spine. She turned to find Mike Cantor standing beside a sleek black car, the driver holding the rear door open. "I thought you might prefer this to a taxi," he said, his expression carefully neutral, though his eyes betrayed a hint of eagerness that hadn't been there during their first encounters. Before Karen could formulate a response, Lily squealed in delight. "Mr. Mike, are you coming to our apartment?" "I'm afraid not, Lily," he answered, crouching to her level. "I just wanted to make sure you got home comfortably on your special day." "That's very nice, but—" Karen began. "Please, Mama." Lily tugged at her hand. "Mr. Mike's car is so much prettier than a taxi." Karen relented, partly because of her daughter's pleading and partly because, standing in the hospital parking lot, arguing with one of New York's most powerful businessmen seemed unwise. "Thank you," she said stiffly as she helped Lily into the car. The interior was luxurious but understated, the leather seats soft and comfortable. Lily immediately began exploring every button and compartment within reach, squealing with delight, when she discovered a small refrigerator containing juice boxes. "I thought she might be thirsty," Mike explained, watching Lily's joy with what appeared to be genuine pleasure. The drive to Queens was filled with Lily's excited chatter about returning to her bedroom, seeing her other toys, and finally wearing her own clothes instead of hospital gowns. Karen noticed how attentively Mike listened to the little girl, asking questions that showed he remembered details from their previous conversations. It was disconcerting to reconcile this considerate man with the cold businessman who had propositioned her that rainy night. 2 versions of the same person, so contradictory that Karen sometimes wondered if she had imagined one of them. When they arrived at her modest apartment building, Mike surprised her again. "I've taken the liberty of having groceries delivered," he said as the driver opened the door. "Nothing presumptuous, just basics. I thought cooking might be the last thing you'd want to worry about today." Karen wasn't sure whether to be grateful or offended at the presumption. That wasn't necessary. "Very little in life is truly necessary," he replied with that enigmatic half-smile. "Sometimes we do things simply because they might be helpful." Before she could respond, Lily tugged at Mike's sleeve. "Will you come visit me here since I'm not at the hospital anymore?" A flash of something, vulnerability perhaps, crossed his face before he looked to Karen. "That would be entirely up to your mother." Karen felt caught in an impossible position. Refusing would disappoint Lily, who had clearly grown attached to Mike's visits. Agreeing would invite further complication into a situation she was trying desperately to simplify. "We'll see," she hedged, earning a frown from her daughter. "Lily needs to rest and adjust to being home." "Of course," Mike nodded, understanding. The diplomatic refusal. He turned to Lily with a warm smile. You focus on getting stronger, paleontologist ballerina. That's the most important job you have right now. Lily nodded solemnly. I will. As they turned to enter the building, Mike touched Karen's elbow lightly. Karen, I wondered if you might consider having dinner with me tomorrow night to discuss Lily's ongoing treatment plan. Something in his tone suggested more than a medical discussion. Karen hesitated, torn between caution and curiosity. I've made a reservation at Aurelia, he added, naming one of the city's most exclusive restaurants. 8 o'clock. My driver can pick you up. Karen thought of refusing, of drawing a clear line between his involvement with Lily's medical care and any personal connection. But a part of her, a part she was reluctant to acknowledge, wanted to understand the complex man who had entered their lives so dramatically. I'll need to arrange a sitter for Lily, she said. Not quite a yes, but not a refusal either. Already, and taken care of if you approve. Mrs. Chen from 4B, she's been thoroughly vetted, and Lily knows her from before the hospitalization. The thoroughness was both impressive and slightly alarming. You've thought of everything, haven't you? I tried to, he said simply. Is that a yes? Yes, Karen replied before she could reconsider. But just dinner, just talking. A smile touched the corners of his eyes. Of course. Until tomorrow, then. As the black car pulled away, Karen felt a flutter of something like anticipation in her chest, a feeling she quickly suppressed as she led an exhausted but happy Lily upstairs to their apartment. Aurelia was everything Karen had imagined, and more. Crystal chandeliers, white linen tablecloths, wait staff that materialized and disappeared with silent efficiency. She felt simultaneously underdressed and on display in her simple black dress, acutely aware of the curious glances from other diners who clearly recognized Mike Cantor. Mike himself was impeccably attired in a tailored suit that emphasized his broad shoulders and lean frame. But it was his expression when she arrived that caught Karen off guard, a flash of genuine appreciation, perhaps even admiration, before his usual composed mask returned. You look beautiful, he said simply, as they were seated at a secluded table overlooking the city. Thank you. Karen smoothed her napkin over her lap, uncomfortable with the compliment despite herself. How did you know about Mrs. Chen? Background check on you when we began Lily's treatment, he replied with characteristic directness. Standard procedure for compassionate use cases. Of course. Karen shouldn't have been surprised. This was the methodical businessman she'd met that first night. You disapprove. It's invasive. It's thorough, he corrected, then sighed. But perhaps unnecessarily so in this case. I apologize. The apology surprised her. I wasn't expecting that. An apology. A wry smile touched his lips. Contrary to popular belief, I'm capable of recognizing when I've overstepped. Their conversation over dinner flowed more easily than Karen had anticipated. They discussed Lily's progress, the promising results of her latest tests, and the timeline for her continued treatment. Mike was knowledgeable without being condescending, explaining complex medical details in terms Karen could understand. The preliminary data from Lily's case is already informing adjustments to the treatment protocol, he explained as they lingered over dessert. She's helping other children without even knowing it. Karen felt a surge of pride. She'd love that. She's always been a helper, like her mother. Mike's gaze was intent, searching. The nursing staff speaks highly of you. You've been asking about me? I've been curious, he admitted. You're not what I expected, Karen. And what did you expect? He considered the question carefully. Someone who would break under pressure, someone who would resent me for our arrangement. Who says I don't? The words came out sharper than Karen intended. Your eyes. Mike's voice softened. You've never once looked at me with hatred despite having every right to. There's wariness, certainly, caution, but not hatred. Karen looked away, unsettled by his perception. I don't hate easily. It takes too much energy. Another admirable quality. He paused, then continued with careful precision. I find myself thinking about you often, Karen. Not just about Lily's case, about you. The confession hung in the air between them, pulling Karen's gaze back to his face. The usual mask of control had slipped, revealing an uncertainty that seemed utterly foreign on his features. Mike, let me finish, he said quietly. Our arrangement was unconscionable. I recognize that now. I took advantage of your desperation, and there's no justification for that. But something unexpected has happened since then. Karen's heart hammered against her ribs. What? I've come to care for you, and for Lily. The words seemed to cost him something, as if emotional admissions were currency he rarely spent. I find myself wanting to know you beyond our original arrangement, to perhaps begin again, differently. Karen stared at him, a tumult of emotions churning within her, confusion, disbelief, and beneath it all, a dangerous flicker of attraction she had been denying since their first meeting. You don't know me, she finally said. I'd like to. Because you feel guilty? A flash of hurt crossed his face. Is that what you think? What else should I think, Mike? Karen's voice was low but intense. You bought me. You purchased a night. With me as if I were a commodity, and now you claim to have feelings. What am I supposed to make of that? The truth, he said simply, however complicated or inconvenient it might be. The truth is that powerful men like you see people like me as disposable, useful when needed, forgettable afterward. Karen gathered her purse, suddenly needing to escape the opulent restaurant, the intensity of his gaze, the dangerous pull she felt toward him despite everything. I appreciate what you've done for Lily. I will be eternally grateful for her treatment, but there can never be anything between us. Mike's expression hardened, the vulnerability disappearing behind his practiced mask. I see. No, you don't. Karen stood, her hands trembling slightly. You see what you want to see, a grateful single mother, a potential conquest. But you don't see me, Mike. You never have. With that, she turned and walked away, her heels clicking, across the polished floor as every eye in the restaurant followed her exit. The cool night air hit her face as she emerged onto the street, tears threatening to spill despite her determination to remain composed. Behind her, she heard the restaurant door open again. Karen, wait! She turned to find Mike standing there, his usual perfect composure fractured. Please, let me take you home. I'll get a taxi. It's after midnight. I'll manage. She raised her chin, refusing to show weakness. I always have. Something like admiration flickered in his eyes, even as frustration tightened his jaw. At least let me call you tomorrow, to check on Lily. Karen hesitated, torn between her desire to sever all personal connection and her recognition of his genuine concern for her daughter. You can call to check on Lily, she conceded. But that's all, Mike. There is no us. There can't be. As she climbed into a taxi, leaving him standing alone on the sidewalk, Karen felt a hollow ache in her chest that she refused to acknowledge. She had done the right thing, the only thing. Whatever she might feel for Mike Cantor, attraction, curiosity, even the dangerous beginnings of affection, couldn't outweigh how they had begun. Some beginnings couldn't be rewritten, no matter how much either of them might wish to try. Chapter 5, Bridges and Barriers. 3 days passed with no word from Mike, following her first clear rejection of his romantic overture. Karen told herself she was relieved, that the silence confirmed she had made the right decision in drawing a clear boundary. Yet she found herself checking her phone more often than necessary, startling slightly whenever it chimed with a message. During Lily's last treatment 2 days ago, Dr. Reynolds had noted some subtle changes in her blood work. Nothing to worry about yet, he'd assured Karen, but something we want to keep an eye on. Those words had lingered in Karen's mind, despite his casual tone. On Thursday afternoon, Lily's scheduled treatment day, Karen sat in the waiting room of the outpatient clinic, flipping absently through a magazine while Lily colored beside her. The article she pretended to read blurred before her eyes, her thoughts divided between concern over Lily's test results and the disastrous dinner with Mike, the hurt she had glimpsed in his eyes before she walked away. "Miss Gwensel?" The nurse's voice pulled her back to the present. "Dr. Reynolds would like to speak with you before Lily's treatment." A flutter of anxiety tightened Karen's chest as she remembered his previous concern. "Is something wrong?" "Didn't say, but he's waiting in his office." Karen squeezed Lily's shoulder. "I'll be right back, sweetheart. Keep coloring." Dr. Reynolds' office was a study in controlled chaos, stacks of medical journals teetering on every surface, diplomas and children's artwork sharing wall space. The man himself sat behind a desk buried under paperwork, his kind eyes serious, behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Please sit down," he said, gesturing to the chair opposite him. Karen perched on the edge of the seat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Is there a problem with Lily's treatment?" "Not exactly," he hedged, adjusting his glasses. "We've received some unusual test results from her last blood draw." Karen's heart clenched. "What kind of results?" "There are indicators that she may be developing resistance to the XR7 protocol." The room seemed to tilt sideways. "What does that mean? You said she was improving." She is, Dr. Reynolds assured her quickly. "But these early indicators suggest we may need to adjust her treatment plan sooner than anticipated." "What kind of adjustment?" The doctor hesitated. "Ideally, a modified version of the compound that addresses this specific resistance." "And does such a modification exist?" Another hesitation. "It's in development, but it hasn't completed preliminary trials yet." Karen felt the world collapsing around her. After everything, after the bargain she had made, the line she had crossed, Lily might still be in danger. How long before it's available? "That's complicated," Dr. Reynolds admitted. "Standard protocols would suggest 6 to 8 months of testing before it could be released, even for compassionate use." "Lily doesn't have 6 to 8 months if she's developing resistance," Karen said, her voice tight with controlled panic. "I know." The doctor removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "That's why I've already contacted Mr. Cantor directly." The mention of his name sent a jolt through Karen. "Mike knows about this?" "He's the one who personally oversees the XR7 program, and he's—" Dr. Reynolds paused, choosing his words carefully. "He's shown particular interest in Lily's case." Before Karen could respond, a commotion in the hallway drew their attention. Raised voices, hurried footsteps, and then the office door swung open to reveal Mike Cantor, his normally immaculate appearance slightly disheveled, as if he had rushed from elsewhere. "Dr. Reynolds," he acknowledged. Then his eyes fell on Karen. Something flickered in their blue depths, concern, relief, uncertainty, before his professional mask slipped into place. "Karen, I came as soon as I received the test results." "You didn't need to," she said automatically, even as a treacherous part of her responded to his presence with gratitude. "We should discuss this in private," Dr. Reynolds suggested, glancing. Between them, Mike nodded sharply. "My office would be better. I've already called an emergency meeting of the research team." "I can't leave Lily," Karen protested. "She's waiting for her treatment." "The treatment needs to be postponed until we determine the best course of action," Mike said, his tone brooking no argument. "My driver can take us to the corporate research facility. We'll have Lily brought there as well. We have a fully equipped pediatric suite." "You've thought of everything as usual," Karen said, unable to keep the edge from her voice despite the circumstances. A shadow of hurt crossed his face before he controlled it. "This isn't about us, Karen. This is about Lily." The simple truth of that statement deflated her resistance. Whatever had happened or hadn't happened between them, Lily's well-being trumped all other considerations. "Let me get her," she conceded. 30 minutes later, they were in Mike's private elevator, ascending to the executive floor of Cantor Pharmaceuticals. Lily had been settled in what could only be described as a luxury medical suite, complete with child-sized furniture, a wall of toys, and a medical team that treated her with the attention usually reserved for royalty. "She'll be fine there while we meet with the research team," Mike assured Karen as the elevator doors opened. "The nurses have my direct line if anything changes." His corner office suite was filled with people when they entered. Scientists in lab coats, executives in suits, all looking expectantly toward Mike as he strode in. "Dr. Patel, walk us through what we're seeing in Lily's blood work," Mike commanded, gesturing for Karen to take the seat beside his at the conference table. The next hour passed in a blur of medical terminology and complex biochemistry that left Karen struggling to follow. What she did understand was devastating. The revolutionary treatment that had been saving Lily was becoming less effective as her body developed antibodies against it. Without intervention, her condition would begin deteriorating again within weeks. "What about the modified compound?" Mike asked, his attention laser-focused on a nervous-looking scientist. "XR7B is showing promising results in the lab, but we're at least 3 months from even preliminary human trials," the woman replied, glancing apologetically at Karen. "That's not acceptable," Mike said flatly. "What would it take to accelerate that timeline?" "Sir, there are safety protocols." "I'm well aware of the protocols, Dr. Harris. I'm asking what it would take to compress them without compromising safety." The room fell silent as the scientists exchanged uncomfortable glances. Finally, Dr. Patel spoke up. "With unlimited resources and round-the-clock lab work, we might have a modified treatment ready for compassionate use in 3 weeks. But the FDA, leave the FDA to me," Mike interrupted. "I want every researcher we have on this project. Cancel or leave. Double the lab staff if necessary." "Mr. Cantor," one of the executives began cautiously, "the cost implications—" "Did I ask about costs?" Mike's voice was dangerously soft. "No, sir, but shareholders, I'll cover any expenses the board questions personally." He turned to the scientists. 3 weeks, make it happen." As the team filed out, assignments already being distributed, Karen sat in stunned silence. Mike remained standing, his back to her, staring out at the city skyline through the floor-to-ceiling. "Windows, why are you doing this?" she finally asked. He turned slowly, his expression unreadable. "You know why. Because you feel guilty about how we started? Because you think this will make me forgive you?" Pain flashed across his features before he controlled it. "Is it so hard to believe I simply care about what happens to Lily, to you?" The simple question struck at Karen's defenses, cracking the wall she had carefully constructed between them. "I don't know what to believe anymore." Mike moved closer, stopping just short of touching her. "Believe that whatever happened between us, however it started, I would do anything to ensure Lily gets well. The rest is up to you." Karen looked up at him, seeing beyond the powerful CEO to the man beneath, a man who, for all his wealth and influence, looked as vulnerable in this moment as she felt. She had a sudden, disorienting flashback to that first night in his office, when he had seemed so coldly untouchable. How had so much changed in so little time? "I should check on Lily," she said, rising abruptly. "Of course." He stepped back, giving her space. "I'll have someone show you to the pediatric suite." Before she could reach the door, his voice stopped her. "Karen!" She turned, something in his tone compelling her attention. Whatever you think of me, whatever you feel or don't feel, please know that I will do everything in my power to make sure Lily gets the treatment she needs." The simple sincerity in his voice threatened to undo her. "I know," she whispered, and fled before he could see the conflicted emotions she knew were written plainly on her face. The next 48 hours passed in a haze of activity. Karen was given a private room adjoining Lily's suite, where she slept fitfully between nurses' checks and doctors' visits. Mike appeared periodically to confer with the medical team, always professional, always keeping a careful distance from Karen, even as his eyes sought hers across the room. On the third morning, Karen woke to find Lily's bed empty. Panic surged through her until she heard her daughter's distinctive giggle from the adjoining playroom. Wrapping a robe around herself, Karen pushed open the door to find Lily sitting cross-legged on the floor across from Mike, both of them surrounded by dinosaur figures arranged in what appeared to be an elaborate prehistoric battle scene. "No, Mr. Mike, the T-Rex would definitely win against the Spinosaurus," Lily was explaining with the confidence of a paleontology professor. "He has the strongest bite force of any dinosaur ever." A compelling argument, Mike conceded, his expression softer than Karen had ever seen it. But the Spinosaurus had those powerful arms and claws, much more useful than T-Rex's tiny arms. But T-Rex didn't need good arms because his mouth was so strong. "I can't argue with that logic," Mike laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his usually stern features. Neither had noticed Karen yet, and she found herself holding her breath, captivated by this unguarded moment. Mike Cantor, the ruthless pharmaceutical titan, was sitting cross-legged on the floor in what appeared to be yesterday's shirt, with the sleeves rolled up, debating dinosaur supremacy with utter seriousness. As if sensing her presence, Mike looked up, their eyes meeting across the room. Something electric passed between them. Not desire, not exactly, but a connection that transcended their complicated history. For a moment, they were simply two people united in their concern for the child. Between them, "Mama!" Lily broke the spell, scrambling up to hug Karen's legs. "Mr. Mike brought me the whole dinosaur kingdom, and guess what? The doctor said I can have ice cream for breakfast because I was so brave for my test yesterday." Karen smiled, smoothing her daughter's hair. "Ice cream, huh? That sounds like quite a special exception." "It has calcium," Mike offered with a hint of mischief as he rose gracefully to his feet. "Very important for growing bones." "Of course," Karen agreed, unable to suppress a smile. "How educational." "I should get back to the lab," Mike said, his professional demeanor returning. "Dr. Patel has some promising results to review." "Can you come back later?" Lily asked, gazing up at him with undisguised adoration. "You promised to show me how the Brachiosaurus used its long neck to hide from predators." Mike hesitated, glancing at Karen as if seeking permission. The vulnerability in his expression tugged at something deep within her. "I'm sure Mr. Cantor is very busy," she began. "I'll make time," Mike interjected softly, his eyes never leaving hers. "If that's all right with your mother?" Put on the spot, Karen could only nod. Lily cheered, hugging Mike's legs with the uninhibited affection only children can offer. Karen watched as his hand came to rest gently on her daughter's head, the gesture achingly tender. After Lily released him and returned to her dinosaurs, Mike moved closer to Karen, lowering his voice. "We've had a breakthrough with the modified compound. Dr. Patel thinks we could begin treatment as early as next week if the preliminary safety data holds." Relief washed over Karen, momentarily overwhelming her caution around him. Without thinking, she reached for his hand, squeezing it tightly. "Thank you." Mike looked down at their joined hands, then back to her face, his expression open and vulnerable in a way she had never seen before. "Karen, Dr. Patel is looking for you, sir," a voice interrupted from the doorway. A young assistant stood there, tablet in hand. "She says it's urgent," The moment shattered. Mike withdrew his hand reluctantly. "I'll be right there." He turned back to Karen. "We'll talk later." It was both a statement and a question. Karen found herself nodding, unsure what she was agreeing to, but unable to deny the connection that had formed between them, despite everything. After he left, Karen sank into a chair, watching Lily play with her new dinosaurs. The emotions churning within her were impossible to untangle. Gratitude, confusion, lingering anger, and beneath it all, a growing affection she was afraid to examine too closely. Her phone chimed with a message. Mike's name appeared on the screen. "Dinner tonight? Just to discuss Lily's treatment. My office, 8 p.m. Dr. Reynolds will stay with Lily." Karen stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. Every instinct for self-preservation told her to refuse, to maintain the professional distance she had insisted upon. Yet she found herself typing, "Okay, 8 p.m. The response came immediately. "Thank you for giving me a chance to explain." Karen put the phone down, unsure what she was really agreeing to. A discussion about Lily's treatment or something much more complicated. Either way, she sensed that tonight would change everything, for better or worse. Chapter 6. Actions speak louder. When Karen arrived at Mike's office that evening, she found it transformed. The austere executive space had been softened with subtle lighting, and a small table was set near the windows, offering a panoramic view of the city as twilight descended. "Thank you for coming," Mike said, rising from his desk. "I thought we might be more comfortable there. I had dinner brought in." As they settled across from each other, Mike poured water into crystal glasses. "Dr. Patel has confirmed that XR7B is ready for compassionate use. The FDA has granted emergency approval for Lily's case." Relief flooded through Karen. "How soon can we start?" "Tomorrow morning." Mike's eyes held hers. "The first dose is being prepared as we speak." "That's incredible. How did you get everything approved so quickly?" A ghost of a smile touched Mike's lips. "Let's just say I called in every favor I've accumulated in 20 years of pharmaceutical development. You used your personal influence for Lily." "I did." His voice was quiet but steady. "And I would do it again." They ate in silence for a few moments, Karen struggling to reconcile the man across from her with the cold businessman who had propositioned her that rainy night. "Why did you really ask me here tonight, Mike?" He considered her question carefully. "To tell you about the treatment, yes, but also to ask for a second chance." "A second chance at what?" "At showing you who I really am." Mike's gaze was intent, searching. "At proving that the man you met that first night isn't the whole truth of me. I appreciate what you've done for Lily. I will be eternally grateful for her treatment. But there can never be anything between us." Pain flashed across his features before he controlled it. "I understand." The remainder of their meal passed in silence, a gulf of unspoken emotions between them. The modified treatment began the next morning, with Lily receiving the first dose of XR7B under the watchful eyes of Dr. Reynolds and the research team. Karen held her daughter's hand throughout the procedure, acutely aware of Mike standing in the background. "All stable," Dr. Patel announced after 30 minutes. "No adverse reactions detected." "Thank you," Karen said to Mike as the medical team dispersed. He nodded once, acknowledgement without expectation, then turned and left without another word. Over the next 2 weeks, Lily responded remarkably well to the new treatment. Though Karen occasionally glimpsed Mike during their hospital visits, he maintained a respectful distance, speaking primarily with the medical team rather than approaching her directly. Then the gifts began arriving. The first appeared on their doorstep after Lily's 4th treatment. A child-sized lab coat with Dr. Lily Gwentzel, paleontologist extraordinaire, embroidered above the pocket, accompanied by a professional-grade toy microscope. There was no card, but Karen knew instantly who had sent it. 3 days later, a children's encyclopedia of dinosaurs arrived, each page featuring interactive holograms. Again, no note, just the joy on Lily's face as she explored her new treasure. The third gift was delivered by courier, 2 tickets to Dinosaurs After Dark, a nighttime exhibition at the Natural History Museum. This time, there was a note for Lily. No obligations. The car will be available if you choose to attend. Mensch kann. We go, Mama, please, Lily begged, already planning which dinosaur t-shirt to wear. Karen found herself unable to refuse the hope in her daughter's eyes. Yes, we can go. The museum event was magical. Dramatic lighting made the dinosaur skeletons seem almost alive, their shadows dancing across marble floors. Karen was so engrossed in her daughter's excitement that she didn't notice Mike until he was standing beside them. She has quite the scientific mind, he observed quietly. Like her mother. There was warmth in his voice, but when Karen glanced at him, his expression was carefully neutral. I hope you don't mind my being here. I'm one of the exhibition sponsors. Their evening continued, with Mike maintaining a respectful distance from Karen while engaging warmly with Lily. When they reached Karen's apartment afterward, Lily immediately disappeared to call her friend. Thank you, Karen said. For tonight. For everything. Karen, Mike began, his voice suddenly uncertain. I know we agreed to take things slowly, but I need you to know that She stepped forward, silencing his words with a kiss that conveyed everything she wasn't ready to say, aloud. His surprise lasted only a moment before he responded, his arms encircling her with gentle reverence. Unlike their first physical encounter, this kiss held nothing of transaction or obligation. When they separated, Mike rested his forehead against hers. I've been wanting to do that for a very long time. Me too, Karen confessed, surprising herself with the truth of it. The 4th week after Lily's treatments began marked a milestone. Dr. Reynolds delivered news that left Karen weak with relief. For the first time, he used the word remission as a realistic possibility. That evening, a package arrived, not for Lily but for Karen. Inside was a letter and a delicate silver bracelet with a tiny heart charm bearing Lily's birthstone. The letter, handwritten on cream stationery, explained that Mike had established a foundation for children with rare cardiac conditions, inspired by Lily's case. He had named it the Lily Foundation, if she would permit such presumption. Before Karen could examine her feelings too deeply, her phone chimed with a reminder about the hospital charity gala the following evening, a fundraiser she had completely forgotten about. As if on cue, her phone rang, Mike's assistant calling to arrange transportation and childcare for the gala. The presumption should have irritated Karen. Instead, she found herself oddly touched by his thoughtfulness. At the gala, Karen spotted Mike immediately, engaged in conversation with the hospital's chief of medicine. She deliberately moved in the opposite direction, yet remained acutely aware of his location, as if an invisible thread connected them. Later, in a quiet corridor away from the crowd, Mike found her. You look beautiful, he said simply. The Lily Foundation is a wonderful gesture. It's more than a gesture, he corrected gently. It's already funded, with a permanent endowment. Whether or not you want me in your lives, that foundation will help children like Lily for generations. The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. This wasn't a ploy to win her approval. It was something deeper, more genuine. Why are you doing all of this? Karen asked. When my sister died, something in me hardened. I decided emotions were liabilities, that clinical detachment was the only way to succeed. I built my company with that philosophy, rational, calculating, uncompromising. He paused, his gaze distant. It was efficient, profitable, and utterly empty. I didn't realize how empty until I met you." The raw honesty in his voice left Karen speechless. This was not calculated charm, this was truth, unvarnished and vulnerable. Just then, the hospital director announced Mike's donation, a sum so staggering that gasps rippled through the ballroom. But it was the next announcement that froze Karen in place. Mike had established the Karen Initiative to provide financial support for parents who needed to take leave from work during their child's treatment. His eyes found hers across the crowded room, not seeking approval but offering understanding. He had recognized her struggle as a single mother and addressed it not just for her, but for all parents facing similar challenges. As the applause died down, Mike slipped quietly away. No dramatic declarations, no pressure for acknowledgement, just a thoughtful gift and a dignified exit. Karen watched him go, feeling something dangerously close to regret. Chapter 7. The Man Behind the Mask. 2 months had passed since Lily began her treatment with XR7B. The changes in the little girl were nothing short of miraculous. Her energy had returned in full force, her appetite had improved, and the shadows beneath her eyes had disappeared. Completely. Dr. Reynolds had officially declared her in remission, though she would need maintenance treatments for at least another year. In those 2 months, Karen had rejected Mike's romantic advances 3 times. The first at the restaurant, when he initially confessed his feelings. The second when he sent extravagant gifts and a heartfelt letter, all of which she had returned unopened. The third when he appeared at the hospital during her shift with flowers, only to be firmly but politely rebuffed in front of her colleagues. Each rejection seemed to affect him deeply, yet he remained steadfast in his support of Lily's treatment and the foundation he had created in her name. He respected Karen's boundaries, while continuing to demonstrate a character far different from the cold businessman she had first encountered. Karen had returned to full-time work at the hospital, greeted by colleagues who treated her with a new kind of deference since the gala, as if her connection to Mike Cantor, however tenuous, had elevated her status. The Karen Initiative had already helped 3 families in the pediatric ward, allowing parents to take paid leave during their children's treatments. Life was returning to normal, or at least a new version of normal. Lily had started back at school, in part-time, proudly wearing her dinosaur backpack and regaling her classmates with tales of her medical adventure, which grew more elaborate with each telling. The only element that remained unresolved was Mike, and the growing conflict between Karen's determination to maintain distance and her increasing difficulty in denying her feelings for him. True to his word, he had maintained a respectful distance since the gala. His gifts to Lily continued: educational books, a children's science subscription box, tickets to educational events, always delivered by courier, always with a simple note signed simply M. He never pressured Karen for responses or acknowledgements, never used the gifts as an excuse to contact her directly. It was as if he had accepted her rejection completely, content to remain a peripheral but supportive presence in their lives. Karen told herself this was exactly what she had wanted, a clear boundary between them, his help for Lily without personal entanglement. Yet she found herself thinking of him at odd moments, when she fastened the silver bracelet around her wrist each morning, when Lily excitedly showed her a new dinosaur fact from one of his books, when she passed the executive tower of Cantor Pharmaceuticals on her way to work. "You've got it bad," Tasha observed one afternoon as they left the hospital together, catching Karen glancing up at the gleaming skyscraper. "Why don't you just call him?" "It's not like that," Karen protested, quickening her pace. "It's complicated. Men are always complicated," Tasha shrugged. "But that man looks at you like you're the answer to a question he's been asking his whole life." "That's not nothing, Karen." The observation lingered in Karen's mind as she picked Lily up from school, listening to her daughter's enthusiastic recounting of the class turtles' adventures. When they arrived home, a package waited outside their apartment door, larger than the usual courier deliveries. "Is it from Mr. Mike?" Lily asked immediately, bouncing with anticipation. "Let's see," Karen said, carrying it inside. There was no note attached to the outside, which was unusual. When she opened it, she found not the expected educational toy or book, but several leather-bound journals and a letter on familiar cream. "Stationery. These aren't for me," Lily pouted, examining the plain journals with disappointment. "Why don't you start your homework while I make dinner?" Karen suggested, her curiosity piqued by the unexpected delivery. Once Lily was settled at the kitchen table with her math workbook, Karen opened the letter. Karen. "These belonged to my sister, Eliza. She kept journals from the time she was old. Enough to write until the end. I've never shown them to anyone, but I think perhaps you should see them. They might help you understand why Lily's case affected me so deeply, and why I acted as I did when we first met, though nothing can truly excuse it. You once asked me why I went into pharmaceuticals. The truth is, in these pages, I don't expect this to change anything between us, but I believe in informed decisions, and you've been making decisions about me without all the relevant information. If you choose not to read them, I understand completely. Either way, please keep them. They should belong to someone who understands their value." Mike Karen stared at the journals, feeling as if she had been handed something infinitely precious and fragile. The gesture was so unexpectedly personal, so vulnerable, that it took her breath away. To share his sister's private thoughts, to expose that part of his history to her judgment, it spoke of a trust she hadn't realized he felt. After Lily was asleep, Karen curled up in her reading chair and opened the first journal, the childish. Handwriting chronicled the ordinary adventures of a young girl, school projects, friendships, complaints about an older brother who was too serious and wouldn't play dolls with her. The brother Mike appeared frequently in her entries, always portrayed with the exasperated affection of a younger sibling. As the journals progressed, the writing matured, and a theme emerged. Eliza's increasing fatigue, doctor's appointments, her parents' worried faces when they thought she wasn't looking. The diagnosis, when it came, was recorded with the straightforward acceptance only children can manage. "The doctor says my heart isn't working right. I have to take medicine every day now." Karen found herself immersed in the life of a girl who had been gone for decades, her voice preserved in blue ink and careful handwriting. The similarities to Lily's experience were haunting. The same brave front for worried parents, the same childish frustration with physical limitations, the same determination to live normally despite illness. Eliza had been 10 when she died, 4 years older than Lily. Her final journal entries showed a growing awareness of her condition's seriousness, yet maintained the resilient optimism of youth. The last entry, dated just 3 days before her death, contained a passage that made Karen's eyes fill with tears. Mike promised to find a cure when he grows up. He's studying all the time now, reading medical books that are way too hard for a 14-year-old. Mom says he should play basketball with his friends instead, but he says this is more important. Today he showed me his science project. It's about heart medications and how they work. It's really boring, but I pretended to think it was cool because he worked so hard on it. He gets this really determined look when he talks about medicine, like he's going to fix everything all by himself. I hope he figures it out, not just for me, but for other kids too. Karen closed the journal, understanding washing over her in a powerful wave. Mike's entire life, his company, his research, the billions he had made developing life-saving medications, all of it had stemmed from a 14-year-old boy's desperate promise to a dying sister. A promise he had been unable to keep for Eliza, but had dedicated his life to fulfilling for others. The cold, calculating businessman who had propositioned her that rainy night was the armor built by a boy who had learned too young that love and medicine weren't always enough to save someone. His detachment wasn't indifference, it was self-preservation. Karen sat with this revelation for a long time. The journals spread around her like pieces of a puzzle that finally formed a complete picture. The man she had judged so harshly had been shaped by a loss that mirrored her own greatest fear. He had seen in Lily not just another patient, but a second chance, a child he could help when he couldn't help his sister. His proposition, while still unconscionable, now seemed less the act of a callous predator and more the desperate bargain of someone who had learned that everything in life, even health, even life itself, had a price. It didn't excuse what he had done, but it made him human in a way she hadn't allowed herself to see before. The next morning, Karen found herself standing in the lobby of Cantor Pharmaceuticals, the journals carefully wrapped and tucked into her tote bag. She hadn't planned to come here, had told herself she needed time to process what she had learned, yet here she was, drawn by an urgency she couldn't quite name. "May I help you?" the receptionist asked, professionally cordial. "I'd like to see Mike Cantor," Karen said, the words emerging with more confidence than she felt. The young woman's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose slightly. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but Mr. Cantor is in meetings all day. If you'd like to leave your name, I can see if his assistant can schedule something for next week." Karen hesitated, disappointment warring with relief. Perhaps it was better this way, time to think, to plan what she wanted to say. "That's all right. Karen?" She turned to find Mike stepping off the elevator, briefcase in hand, apparently on his way out. He looked momentarily startled to see her, then carefully controlled his expression. "Is Lily all right?" he asked immediately, concern evident in his voice. "She's fine," Karen assured him quickly. I read the journals." Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by a vulnerability that made him look suddenly younger. "I see." They stood in awkward silence, the busy lobby continuing its flow of activity around them. "I was just heading out to a meeting," Mike finally said. "But it can wait. Would you like to come up to my office?" Karen nodded, following him to the executive elevator. The ride up was silent, tension thick between them. When they reached his office, Mike set his briefcase aside and turned to her, his professional facade firmly in place despite the uncertainty in his eyes. "I hope the journals helped explain some things," he said carefully. They did. Karen removed the wrapped package from her bag, holding it out to him. "But I can't keep them, Mike. They're too personal, too precious." He made no move to take them. "They're safer with you than with me." "What do you mean?" Mike moved to the window, his back to her as he gazed out at the city. "I built this company on Eliza's memory, yet I've spent decades trying to forget the pain of losing her. Those journals, I've never been able to read them without falling apart. They're better with someone who can appreciate them for what they are, not just what they represent." Karen set the package on his desk, moving to stand beside him at the window. "She would be proud of you, you know, of all you've accomplished." A muscle tightened in his jaw. "Would she? The brother she describes in those pages, the idealistic boy who wanted to save the world, he's long gone, Karen. Replaced by a man who propositions desperate mothers and treats people like commodities." He turned to face her, his expression raw with self-recrimination. "What happened to us? It's not who I wanted to be." The naked honesty in his voice disarmed her completely. This wasn't the smooth, controlled CEO or even the gentleman who sat on the floor discussing dinosaurs with Lily. This was someone far more vulnerable, a man confronting the distance between his childhood ideals and the reality he had created. People change, Karen said quietly. They make mistakes. They lose their way. Some mistakes can't be forgiven. That's not for you to decide. Karen met his gaze steadily. What you did, what we did, it wasn't one-sided. I agreed to your proposition. I made that choice. Out of desperation, he countered, because I exploited your greatest fear. Yes, she acknowledged. But I've had months to think about that night, Mike. And I've realized something important. I don't regret it. Surprise flickered across his features. You don't? How could I when it saved my daughter's life? Karen took a deep breath, voicing a truth she had been avoiding for months. What I regret is that it happened that way, as a transaction rather than a choice, that we met under circumstances that poisoned any chance of something real developing between us. Mike stared at her, hope and disbelief warring in his expression. Karen, I'm not saying I'm ready for anything between us, she clarified quickly, just that I understand better now. Who you are, why you became that person, and perhaps who you're trying to become now. He seemed at a loss for words, a rarity for a man known for his articulate precision. Where does that leave us? He finally asked. I don't know, Karen admitted. But I think... His office phone buzzed, interrupting whatever she had been about to say. Mike ignored it, his attention focused entirely on her. You should get that, Karen said, taking a step back, suddenly uncertain of what she had come here to say, what she wanted. Mike hesitated, then pressed the intercom button. Yes? Mr. Whitfield is waiting in the conference room, sir. His assistant's voice announced. The Tokyo merger discussion? Tell him I'll be there shortly. Mike released the button, turning back to Karen. I'm sorry. This meeting is important, she finished for him. I understand. Not as important as this conversation, he countered, his eyes never leaving hers. Say the word, and I'll cancel it. The offer touched her, this powerful man willing to set aside business for her, but it also reminded her how different their worlds were, how many responsibilities and obligations defined his life. No, Karen shook her head. We both have jobs to do, and I think I need more time to process everything. Disappointment flickered across his face, but he nodded. Of course. As they walked to the door together, Karen impulsively reached for his hand, squeezing it briefly. Thank you for sharing Eliza with me. He looked down at their joined hands, then back to her face, something like wonder in his eyes. Thank you for understanding what she meant to me. In the lobby, as they prepared to go their separate ways, Mike hesitated. Karen, there's a benefit Friday evening for the Lilly Foundation's first grant recipients. Would you consider attending as my guest? The invitation hung between them, not a demand, not a presumption, but an opportunity. A potential beginning if she chose to take it. I'd need to find a sitter for Lily, she hedged. She's welcome to come, Mike offered immediately. Several of the researchers bringing their children. It's an early evening event, nothing too formal. Karen found herself wanting to say yes, despite the caution still whispering in the back of her mind. I'll think about it. That's all I ask. The smile that touched his lips reached his eyes, warming them in a way that made her heart beat a little faster. As Karen walked away, headed back to the hospital for her afternoon shift, she realized she had already made her decision. She would go to the benefit, would take this small step toward whatever might be possible between them. But first, she needed to understand her own heart better, to be certain that what she was beginning to feel wasn't simply gratitude or an emotional response to learning about his past. Mike deserved more than that. They both did. That evening, as Lily chatted about her day at school, Karen found herself imagining Mike there with them. His gentle patience with Lily's endless questions, his surprising sense of humor, the warmth that seemed to emerge more with each interaction. "Mama, can Mr. Mike come for dinner sometime?" Lily asked suddenly, as if reading her thoughts. "Tommy at school has dinner with his mom's special friend every Thursday." Karen nearly choked on her water. "Mr. Mike is very busy, sweetheart." "But he likes us," Lily persisted with a child's directness. "And you smile more when he's around. You get all shiny-eyed." "I do not get shiny-eyed," Karen protested, feeling her cheeks warm. "Yes, you do," Lily nodded sagely. "Like Princess Jasmine when she looks at Aladdin." Karen couldn't help laughing at the comparison. "It's not quite like that, Lily." "Why not?" her daughter asked with genuine curiosity. "Don't you like him?" The simple question gave Karen pause. Did she like Mike Cantor? The answer, she realized, was far more complicated than her daughter could understand. She respected his dedication to Lily's treatment, appreciated his generosity, admired his intelligence. But that suggested something simpler, something uncontaminated by their history. "It's complicated, sweetheart," she finally said. "Grown-ups always say that when they don't want to answer," Lily observed with the devastating accuracy of a child. Karen smiled, ruffling her daughter's hair. "Very true. Now finish your carrots." Later, after Lily was asleep, Karen found herself staring at Mike's number in her phone, her thumb hovering over the call button. Instead, she sent a simple text. "Lily and I would be happy to attend the benefit on Friday." His response came almost immediately. "I'm glad. I'll send the car at 6. Looking forward to seeing you both." 4 simple sentences that shouldn't have made her heart race, yet somehow did. Karen set her phone aside, trying to ignore the anticipation building within her at the thought of seeing him again. Not in a hospital setting or his office, but at an event celebrating something they had built together, however indirectly. For the first time since that rainy night in his office, Karen allowed herself to wonder if perhaps their story wasn't finished after all. If what had begun as a desperate bargain might somehow transform into something neither of them had anticipated. Something real. Chapter 8. Crisis Point. The benefit for the Lily Foundation marked Karen's 4th rejection of Mike's advances. At the hospital charity gala weeks earlier, he had made a public declaration of his feelings during his speech about the Karen Initiative. Though moved by his generosity, she had walked away, unable to reconcile their complicated beginning with the future he envisioned. Yet when the invitation to the Lily Foundation benefit arrived, Karen found herself accepting. Lily's continual questions about Mr. Mike had softened her resolve, and Karen couldn't deny that the foundation was doing remarkable work, helping children like her daughter. The glass-walled conservatory of the Botanical Gardens was transformed into an elegant yet child-friendly venue. Mike greeted them with restrained warmth, his eyes lingering on Karen's deep blue dress before crouching to compliment Lily's dinosaur-patterned cardigan. Throughout the evening, Karen observed Mike in his element, commanding yet approachable, discussing complex medical research one moment and engaging with children the next. His speech was eloquent but personal, explaining how a single patient, he nodded toward Lily without naming her, had inspired a foundation that would help countless children. Later, as the event wound down and Lily's energy flagged, Mike approached them. "May I walk you to the car?" Outside, the May evening was pleasantly cool, stars emerging in the darkening sky. Lily skipped ahead, chasing a lightning bug. "Thank you for coming tonight," Mike said quietly. "It meant a great deal to me. You've created something remarkable with the foundation. I had the right inspiration." His gaze was warm on her face, then shifted to Lily. "She looks stronger every time I see her. The doctors are amazed by her progress." Mike began hesitantly. "Karen, I was wondering if perhaps..." His words were cut short by a sharp cry from Lily. They looked up to see her doubled over, clutching her chest. "Mama!" she gasped, her face contorted in pain. "It hurts!" Karen ran to her daughter, heart pounding with terror as Mike called for help. By the time she reached Lily, the little girl's lips had taken on a bluish tinge, her breathing rapid and shallow. "My driver is bringing the car," Mike said, his voice controlled despite the fear in his eyes. "It will be faster than an ambulance." Karen nodded, gathering Lily into her arms. The world narrowed to her daughter's labored breathing, everything else evaporating in the face of this new crisis. The ride to the hospital passed in a blur. Mike spoke rapidly on his phone, ensuring a cardiac team would be waiting when they arrived. At the emergency entrance, a team whisked Lily away on a gurney with practiced efficiency. "Possible acute rejection of XR7B treatment," a resident reported. As they rushed through the doors, Karen moved to follow, but a nurse gently intercepted her. "They need to stabilize her first." In the waiting room, Mike paced by the window, his earlier composure fracturing. "This doesn't make sense. She was responding so well." Dr. Reynolds appeared 45 minutes later, his expression grave. "We've stabilized her, but her condition is serious. Her body has developed antibodies against the XR7B compound, more aggressive than before." "How is that possible?" Karen asked, her voice barely recognizable. "The modified treatment was specifically designed to avoid that response." "We're running additional tests," Dr. Reynolds said. "Dr. Patel is reviewing her blood work personally." "What are our options?" Mike asked, stepping forward. Dr. Reynolds hesitated. "The standard protocols would be to try a different class of medications entirely, but given Lily's history of resistance—" "You're saying there's no alternative treatment?" Karen whispered. "I'm saying our options are extremely limited." As Karen moved to follow the doctor to Lily's room, Mike touched her arm. "I'll make some calls. There has to be someone working on the next generation of treatments." Hours passed in a haze of medical consultations. Mike worked from a makeshift command center in an unused conference room, visible through glass walls as he paced with his phone, worked with researchers, his tie discarded, shirt sleeves rolled, up as he fought a battle against time. At 3 a.m., Dr. Patel found Karen in Lily's room. "We've identified the problem. Lily's immune system has developed a unique response to the protein carrier in the XR7B compound. It's mounting an aggressive autoimmune response attacking her heart tissue." "What can we do?" "Theoretically, we could develop a modified compound using a different protein carrier, one her immune system won't recognize. But developing such a compound would take months." "She doesn't have months," Karen whispered, looking at her sedated daughter. Dr. Patel hesitated. "There is one possibility. A synthetic protein carrier we've been developing in the lab. It's experimental, completely untested in humans, at least a year from even preliminary trials. How quickly could it be adapted for Lily's treatment? With a fully committed research team, perhaps 72 hours to create a viable compound. But the risks. Without proper testing, we have no way to know the side effects. It could stabilize her heart function or cause catastrophic organ failure. Do we have any other options? Conventional treatments might buy her time, but given the autoimmune response we're seeing, the doctor didn't need to finish the sentence. Karen found Mike in the conference room, surrounded by empty coffee cups and scattered papers. When he looked up, he dismissed the researchers with a quick gesture. "Dr. Patel told you about the synthetic carrier," he said once they were alone. Karen nodded. "She said it's untested, dangerous." "It is," he acknowledged, "but I've reviewed the preliminary data. The concept is sound. With sufficient resources, it could kill her," Karen said bluntly. Mike didn't flinch from the truth. "Yes, but nothing will definitely kill her." "How can I make this decision?" Karen whispered, her composure finally cracking. "How can I gamble with her life?" Mike moved to her, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "You're not alone in this, Karen. Whatever you decide, I'm with you." The simple declaration broke something inside her. Karen leaned against him as silent. Tears escaped. Mike's arms came around her, offering strength when her own was depleted. "I'm so scared," she admitted. "I know," he murmured, "but Lily is a fighter, like her mother." When Karen pulled back, wiping her eyes, a new resolve had formed. "Let's do it, the synthetic carrier. If it's her only chance." Mike nodded, his expression set with focused intensity. "I'll call the research team immediately." The next 72 hours passed in a blur. The entire research wing of Cantor Pharmaceuticals was dedicated to developing the modified treatment, with teams working in shifts around the clock. Mike personally oversaw the operation, catching brief moments of sleep on a cot in his office, never leaving the building. On the morning of the third day, Karen arrived at the hospital to find Mike already in Lily's room, speaking softly to her, sleeping form. The scene stopped her in the doorway, this powerful man sitting beside her daughter's bed, with his tie askew and 3 days' worth of stubble, looking utterly vulnerable as he promised the unconscious child that help was coming. "The final synthesis is complete," he said, his voice rough with exhaustion. "Dr. Patel is reviewing the results now. If everything checks out, we could begin treatment this afternoon." "What are the odds?" "Does it matter?" Mike asked gently. "Even if they're 1 in a million, we take them." The treatment began that afternoon. Lily was brought out of sedation briefly to explain what would happen, her eyes wide but trusting as Karen held her hand, and Mike explained how the special medicine would help her heart remember how to be strong again. "Like a superhero serum?" Lily asked, her voice weak. "Exactly like that," Mike smiled, brushing hair from her forehead. "Especially formulated for one very brave paleontologist ballerina." Once Lily was sedated again, the room transformed into a high-tech medical suite. The compound arrived in a specialized container, looking deceptively ordinary, a clear liquid that held life or death in its molecular structure. Karen watched as Mike and Dr. Patel worked in perfect synchrony, their movements precise as they prepared the treatment. As the compound began flowing into Lily's IV, Mike's eyes met Karen's across the bed. In that moment, an understanding passed between them. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. By the third hour, the tension had shifted from fear to cautious hope as preliminary blood tests showed a reduction in the antibodies attacking Lily's heart tissue. "It's working," Dr. Patel confirmed. "The synthetic carrier is being accepted." Relief swept through the room, though everyone knew that initial success didn't guarantee long-term results. The treatment would need to continue for at least 48 hours before they could be confident. Later that night, Karen found Mike asleep in a chair beside Lily's bed, his body finally surrendering to exhaustion. She draped a blanket over his shoulders, her hand lingering longer than necessary. Standing in the quiet hospital room, watching over the two people who had somehow become the center of her world, Karen realized that something fundamental had changed. The man who had moved heaven and earth to save her daughter bore little resemblance to the cold businessman she had met months ago. Or perhaps he was exactly the same man, just with his formidable determination now focused on something far more important than profit margins and shareholder value. Chapter 9, Walls Coming Down. 2 months after the crisis, Lily was released from the hospital for the second time. The experimental treatment had succeeded beyond even the most optimistic projections, not only halting the autoimmune response, but actually reversing much of the damage to her heart tissue. While she would need ongoing monitoring and maintenance doses of the medication, the doctors were cautiously using the word cured in their discussions. The day Lily walked out of the hospital, holding both Karen's and Mike's hands, felt like a rebirth for all of them. The summer sunshine bathed them in golden light as Lily skipped between them, chattering about returning to her bedroom, seeing her friends, all the normal childhood activities that had seemed so desperately out of reach just weeks before. "Can we get ice cream?" she asked, looking up at the adults with the untroubled expectation of a child who had no concept of how close she had come to death. "Ice cream sounds perfect." Mike smiled, his expression lighter than Karen had ever seen it, as they sat outside the ice cream parlor, watching Lily methodically work her way through a cone with scientific precision. Karen studied Mike's profile. The crisis had changed him, or perhaps more accurately, had revealed parts of him that had always existed beneath the corporate armor. The ruthless efficiency and single-minded determination that had made him a billionaire had been redirected toward Lily's recovery, with results that bordered on miraculous. But it was more than that. In the raw, desperate hours of Lily's treatment, all pretense had fallen away between them. They had seen each other at their most vulnerable, most authentic. The barriers Karen had so carefully maintained had crumbled in those moments when they stood together watching Lily's life hang in the balance. "What happens now?" she asked quietly, while Lily was distracted by a puppy at a neighboring table. Mike turned to her, understanding the question went far beyond immediate plans. "That depends on what you want to happen. And if I'm not sure—" A small smile touched his lips. "Then we figure it out together, one day at a time." The simple answer felt right, acknowledging the complexity of their situation while offering a path forward that didn't demand immediate definitions or boundaries. After so much intensity, the prospect of simply letting their relationship evolve naturally was appealing. They fell into a comfortable routine over the following weeks. Mike visited regularly, usually bearing educational gifts for Lily that increasingly seemed chosen to delight rather than just instruct. Their time together centered around Lily's activities: museum visits, trips to the park, science experiments that invariably ended with the kitchen table covered in baking soda or food coloring. Karen observed with growing warmth how Mike adapted himself to their lives rather than expecting them to adapt to his. He scheduled business calls around Lily's treatment appointments, moved meetings to accommodate school events, and seemed genuinely content sitting on their small balcony, drinking supermarket wine from mismatched glasses. "You're different here," she commented one evening after Lily had gone to bed, as they sat watching the city lights from her apartment's modest balcony. "Different how?" Mike asked, his tie loosened, jacket discarded hours ago. "Lighter," Karen tried to explain. "Less controlled." He considered this, swirling the wine in his glass. "I suppose I am. This place, being with you and Lily, it doesn't demand the version of me that the rest of the world expects. And which version is real?" Mike's eyes met hers, startlingly vulnerable in the dim light. "Both. Neither. I'm still figuring that out." He paused, then added softly, "But I think the person I am here is who I'd like to be all the time." The admission touched Karen deeply. This powerful man who commanded a corporate empire was sitting on her worn patio furniture, admitting uncertainty about his own identity with a humility that would have seemed impossible months ago. "I like that person," she said simply. The smile that spread across his face transformed his features, erasing the lingering traces of the controlled businessman and revealing the man beneath, warm, gentle, surprisingly vulnerable. Their first, real kiss happened a week later, after Mike taught Lily to ride a bike in the park near their apartment. Karen had watched from a bench as he ran alongside the wobbly bicycle, his suit pants rolled up to avoid the chain, his designer shirt stained with chain grease, utterly unconcerned with anything except Lily's triumphant face when she finally managed to pedal on her own. "You didn't have to ruin your clothes," Karen said later as they walked home, Lily riding ahead of them, wobbling but determined. "They're just clothes," Mike shrugged. Her smile was worth ruining 100 suits. The simple statement crystallized something Karen had been feeling for weeks. This was a man who had fundamentally re-evaluated what mattered to him. The Mike Cantor she had met that rainy night would never have considered a child's joy worth more than material possessions. This Mike unquestionably did. When they reached her apartment, Lily immediately disappeared to call her best friend and share news of her biking achievement. Karen and Mike stood in the hallway, a new awareness humming between them. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for today, for everything." "Karen," Mike began, his voice suddenly uncertain, "I know we agreed to take things slowly, but I need you to know that She stepped forward, silencing his words with a kiss that conveyed everything. She wasn't ready to say aloud. His surprise lasted only a moment before he responded, his arms encircling her with gentle reverence, as if she were something impossibly precious. Unlike their first physical encounter, this kiss held nothing of transaction or obligation. It was a beginning rather than an ending, tentative and hopeful in a way that made Karen's heart race. When they separated, Mike rested his forehead against hers, his breathing unsteady. "I've been wanting to do that for a very long time," he admitted. "Me too," Karen confessed, surprising herself with the truth of it. Their relationship evolved gradually after that first kiss, each step forward deliberate and considered. Mike never presumed, never pushed, allowing Karen to set the pace as they navigated the transition from reluctant co-parents to something more intimate. They went on proper dates, Mike making reservations under false names to avoid the publicity his presence inevitably generated. They spent quiet evenings at Karen's apartment after Lily was asleep, talking for hours about everything and nothing, their childhoods, their hopes, the experiences that had shaped them. Karen learned about the driven young man who had built a pharmaceutical empire from nothing, fueled by a promise to a sister he couldn't save. Mike learned about the determined single mother who had worked night shifts to put herself through nursing school while caring for an infant, whose compassion for her patients never wavered despite her own struggles. "Why didn't you ever remarry?" Mike asked one evening as they sat on her small couch, her feet in his lap, the casual intimacy of the position still novel enough to feel slightly daring. Karen considered the question, appreciating that he asked rather than assumed. "After Lily's father left, I couldn't imagine trusting someone enough to let them into our lives. The risk seemed too great." She looked at him, a small smile playing on her lips. "What's your excuse?" "Never found someone worth the distraction," he replied, his thumb tracing absent patterns on her ankle. "Or at least, that's what I told myself. Looking back, I think I was afraid." "The great Mike Cantor afraid," Karen teased gently. His expression remained serious. "Terrified. My parents fell apart after Eliza died. What had been a strong marriage couldn't survive that kind of loss. I think I decided then that caring that deeply was too dangerous." The admission created a moment of profound connection between them. Two people who had built walls for different reasons, now cautiously dismantling them together. As summer turned to fall, their lives became increasingly intertwined. Mike kept clothes at Karen's apartment for impromptu overnight stays. Karen had a key to his penthouse, though she rarely used it, preferring the comfortable familiarity of her own home. They developed inside jokes, comfortable silences, the 1,000 small intimacies that define a relationship. Still, they hadn't said the words. Both seemed hesitant to name what was growing between them, as if doing so might somehow jinx the delicate balance they had achieved. The moment of truth came on a crisp October day at the beach. Despite the cooler weather, Lily had begged for one last seaside outing before winter set in. They had driven to a secluded stretch of shoreline, Mike's driver depositing them with a picnic basket and warm blankets before discreetly disappearing. Lily, raced along the edge of the waves, her energy fully restored after months of treatment, while Karen and Mike walked hand in hand behind her, occasionally stopping to examine an interesting shell or unusual piece of driftwood. "She looks so healthy now," Karen marveled, watching her daughter chase seagulls with boundless enthusiasm. "Sometimes I can hardly believe how close we came to losing her." Mike squeezed her hand. "She's stronger than either of us gave her credit. For, like her mother?" Karen smiled, repeating a comparison he had made often during the crisis. "Exactly like her mother," he confirmed, his expression growing serious. "Karen, there's something I need to tell you." She turned to face him fully, something in his tone capturing her complete attention. "What is it?" Mike took both her hands in his thumbs brushing over her knuckles in a gesture that had become familiar. "These past months have been the happiest of my life. Being with you and Lily, being part of a family, it's shown me everything that was missing before. Everything I didn't know I needed." Karen felt her heart accelerate, anticipation and a strange fear mingling in her chest. "Mike, please," he said softly, "let me finish. I need to say this." She nodded, watching as he struggled visibly with words. This man who could deliver flawless business presentations to rooms full of intimidating investors. "I love you, Karen," he said finally, the simple declaration carrying the weight of everything that had brought them to this moment. "I love Lily, and I know our beginning was complicated, flawed. But what I feel for you now has nothing to do with obligation or guilt or making amends. It's simply love, in its purest form." Karen stared at him, hearing the words she had both longed for and feared. Part of her had been waiting for this moment, expecting it to trigger all the old doubts and reservations. Instead, she felt a profound sense of rightness, as if something long unbalanced had finally found its equilibrium. "You don't have to say anything," Mike continued when she remained silent. "I just needed you to know. Whatever happens next, whatever you decide, the truth doesn't change." Karen stepped closer, raising one hand to his face, her palm against his cheek. "I've been afraid to admit it," she confessed. "Afraid that what I feel isn't real, or that it's just gratitude, or that our past would always poison anything we tried to build." Hope flickered in his eyes. "And now I think some beginnings can be rewritten," she said softly. "Some stories can change direction, and some feelings are too important to deny, no matter how complicated the journey that led to them." "Karen," he whispered, her name a question and a prayer. "I love you too," she said, the words simultaneously terrifying and liberating. "I think I have for longer than I've been willing to admit." The kiss they shared then was different from those that had come before, deeper, more certain, sealed with a truth finally spoken aloud. When they separated, Mike rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed as if memorizing the moment. "Mama, Mr. Mike, look what I found!" Lily's voice broke the spell as she raced toward them, hands cupped around some treasure from the shoreline. As they crouched together to admire the perfect sand dollar she had discovered, Karen felt a sense of completion she had never experienced before. The three of them, huddled together on a windswept beach, examining a fragile natural wonder, it felt like a family, like home. That evening, after they had returned to the city and Lily had fallen asleep, exhausted from her day of adventure, Karen and Mike sat on her small balcony once more, blankets wrapped around them against the autumn chill. "I've been thinking," Mike said, his arm around her shoulders, her head resting against his chest, "about the future." Karen tensed slightly, uncertainty flickering through her newfound contentment. They had declared their love, yes, but the practical realities of their different worlds remained unaddressed. She couldn't imagine herself in Mike's rarefied existence, of penthouse apartments and corporate boardrooms, just as she couldn't picture him truly content in her modest life of hospital shifts and PTA meetings. "What about the future?" she asked cautiously. "I'm considering stepping back from day-to-day operations at Cantor Pharmaceuticals," he said, the statement so unexpected that Karen sat up to look at him. "What? But the company is your life's work." "It was," he corrected gently, "and I'm proud of what I've built. But the Lilly Foundation, the research we're doing with XR7C, that feels more meaningful now. I'd like to focus there on developing treatments for children like Lily, making them accessible regardless of financial circumstances." Karen studied his face in the dim light, searching for signs of doubt or uncertainty. She found none. "Are you sure this is a huge decision, Mike?" "The most certain I've ever been," he replied with simple conviction. "The company will continue. The board is strong, the leadership team capable, but I've spent 20 years chasing success at the expense of everything else. I don't want to waste another day on anything less important than this." "Than what?" Karen asked, though she thought she knew the answer. His eyes met hers, clear and certain in the starlight. "Than love, than family, than being the man I want to be instead of the man I thought I had to be." The words settled over Karen like a blessing, easing fears she hadn't fully acknowledged even to herself. This wasn't about fitting into each other's separate worlds. It was about creating a new world together. "What does that look like?" she asked, allowing herself to imagine possibilities that had seemed forbidden just hours earlier. "This future you're envisioning?" Mike considered the question, his expression thoughtful. "I don't have all the answers yet. I know I want to be wherever you and Lily are. I know I want to put my resources and influence toward making a difference in pediatric medicine. Beyond that," he smiled, the expression holding a new lightness. "Beyond that, perhaps we figure it out together, one day at a time." Karen smiled, her earlier words returned to her. "I like the sound of that." As they sat together beneath the stars, planning a future neither could have imagined on that rainy night months ago, Karen felt the last of her reservations dissolve. Their beginning had been flawed, yes, marked by desperation and inequality, and choices no one should have to make. But their beginning wasn't their whole story. What mattered was the journey they had taken since then, the growth, the healing, the walls slowly dismantled on both sides. What mattered was the love that had emerged, unexpected and transformative, from circumstances that should have made it impossible. What mattered, Karen realized as Mike's arms tightened around her, was not where they had started, but where they were going. Together. Later that night, as they lay together in the quiet darkness of her bedroom, Mike whispered against her hair. "When I saw Lily collapse at the benefit, I realized something I should have known all along." "What?" Karen asked, her head pillowed on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "That there are some things money can't fix. Some battles that can't be won with power or influence." His voice was contemplative in the darkness. It was terrifying and strangely liberating, Karen understood, in acknowledging his own limitations, in facing the possibility of failure despite all his resources. Mike had found a humility that completed his transformation. The man who had once seen everything, even people, as commodities to be acquired, now recognized the true value of what couldn't be purchased: love, family, connection. As she drifted toward sleep, wrapped in his embrace, Karen found herself thinking of Rain, of the desperate woman who had stood in a downpour months ago, willing to sacrifice everything for her child. That woman could never have imagined this outcome, this happiness born from despair, yet here they were. Their separate journeys converged into a shared path, their broken beginnings mended into something whole and beautiful, not despite their past, but because of it, Because every step, even the painful ones, had led them to this moment of perfect understanding. That night, as rain began to fall again over the city, Karen dreamed not of drowning, but of cleansing, of renewal, of all. Things washed clean and made new. Chapter 10, Rain-Soaked Promises. 6 months after Lily's miraculous recovery, Karen sat in Dr. Reynolds' office, her fingers intertwined with Mike's. The doctor studied the final test results, his expression unreadable, until he looked up, eyes shining. "In 30 years of medicine, I've never said this with such certainty," he declared. "Lily is completely cured. Her heart function exceeds normal parameters. It's as if the illness never existed." Karen's breath caught as a sob of joy escaped. Mike pulled her against him, his arms enveloping her as she trembled. She felt his tears against her temple, this powerful man undone by the simple miracle of their daughter's health. "The Lily Protocol is already saving children around the world," Dr. Reynolds told them. Outside his office, Lily twirled in her sapphire blue dress, the exact shade of Mike's eyes. "No more hospital?" she asked, eyes wide with hope. "No more hospital," Karen confirmed, embracing her daughter fiercely. "You're free, my brave girl. We all are," Mike added softly, joining their circle on the floor, heedless of his expensive suit. That evening, after Lily had fallen asleep clutching her favorite dinosaur, Karen found Mike on the balcony staring at the city skyline. Something in his posture sent a flutter of apprehension through her. "Mike, what is it?" He turned, his expression both resolved and uncertain. "I made it official today. I've stepped down as CEO of Cantor Pharmaceuticals." The magnitude of his decision washed over her. "Your company, your life's work, was never about the money or power," he said gently. "It was about a promise to my sister, a promise I've finally fulfilled through Lily." The Lily Foundation is expanding globally. We'll be setting up research centers in cities where children are dying from treatable conditions. London, Tokyo, Johannesburg. His thumbs traced circles on her palms. "It will mean travel, at least initially." "How long will you be gone?" "That depends entirely on you," he said, his voice dropping to that intimate register that never failed to make her skin flush. "On whether you and Lily will come with me." Karen felt the world tilt beneath her feet. "You want us to leave everything? My job, Lily's school?" "I want us to be a family," he said, "in every way possible." The implications overwhelmed her. "I need to think," she whispered. "Take all the time you need." That night, Karen paced her apartment, her thoughts in turmoil. Was she choosing between independence and surrender, or between fear and love? The next day, instead of heading home after her shift, Karen found herself drawn to Cantor Pharmaceuticals. Rain began to fall as she approached the gleaming tower, quickly becoming a deluge that drenched her. She stood on the exact spot where her journey with Mike had begun, face tilted up to the torrent. "Karen!" She turned to see Mike rushing toward her through the downpour, his suit instantly soaked, his face a mask of concern and confusion. "What are you doing out here?" She moved toward him, each step feeling like destiny. "Do you remember the first night we met?" Understanding dawned in his eyes. "You were desperate. I was cold. We were strangers. I stood right here, ready to sacrifice everything for my daughter, and you—" Her voice caught. "You took advantage of that desperation in the worst possible way." Pain flashed across his features. "Karen, but that's not where our story ends," she pressed on. "That terrible beginning gave us this miraculous middle. And now," her voice strengthened with certainty, "now I want to know our ending." "What ending do you want?" "One where we never part again." She placed her palm against his cheek. "I don't care where we go. London, Tokyo, the ends of the earth. Home isn't a place for me anymore. It's you. It's us." The joy that blazed across Mike's face outshone the lightning splitting the sky. He pulled her against him, his mouth finding hers in a kiss that seemed to stop time. Karen melted into him, her body remembering his with a hunger that stole her breath. The rain sealed them together, soaking through layers of clothing until nothing separated them, skin to skin, heart to heart. When they finally broke apart, Mike reached into his pocket with trembling hands. "I've carried this for weeks," he confessed, opening his palm to reveal a ring of platinum and sapphires. "I've been waiting for the perfect moment, only to realize that perfect moments aren't found. They're made." He dropped to one knee on the rain-slicked pavement. "Marry me, Karen, not because of our past or despite it, but because of who we've become together, because I cannot imagine a single day without you and Lily." Karen's answer was another fierce kiss. When they separated, a small voice called out, "Are you and Mr. Mike getting married, Mama?" They turned to find Lily standing under an umbrella held by Mike's driver, her expression curious. Karen knelt before her daughter. "Would that be okay with you, sweetheart?" Lily considered this with solemn deliberation before breaking into a radiant smile. "Does this mean Mr. Mike will be my dad? And we'll be a real family?" Mike joined them, kneeling in the rain beside Karen. "If you'll have me, I would be honored to be your father." Lily launched herself at them both, wrapping her small arms around their necks, pulling them into a circle of love that neither rain nor time could break. 1 year later, the private beach shimmered beneath a gentle summer rain as Lily danced. Down the aisle, scattering flower petals and tiny plastic dinosaurs. Behind her, Karen appeared in a simple gown of ivory silk, her eyes never leaving Mike's as she moved toward him. "I told you it would rain," she whispered when she reached him. "I prayed for it," he replied, his eyes bright. "Some promises need to be rain-soaked to last forever." Their vows spoke of transformations, how desperation had become hope, how transaction had become gift, how two broken people had healed each other. "From desperate bargain to eternal promise," Mike said as he slipped the wedding band onto her. "Finger, you saved me, Karen. In every way a person can be saved." "We saved each other," she corrected, placing her palm against his heart. "And together we saved Lily. Our circle is complete." Their kiss sealed more than a marriage. It consecrated a journey from darkness into light. Around them, rain fell, like benediction, washing away the last shadows of their past. Later, as they swayed together beneath twinkling lights, Mike held her close enough to feel her heartbeat. "Happy?" he murmured against her ear. Karen looked across the gathering to where Lily sat, surrounded by newfound family, then turned back to her husband, seeing in his eyes everything she had once believed impossible. "Happy doesn't begin to describe it," she whispered. "I feel reborn." As night deepened, the rain continued its gentle cadence, no longer a symbol of desperation, but of renewal. Together they had transformed a desperate bargain, made in rain and darkness, into a covenant of love that would withstand whatever storms life might bring. And as the rain blessed their union, Karen knew with bone-deep certainty that some endings were really beginnings in disguise, the most beautiful beginnings of all.